Here's what you need to finish your Jonah and the Whale quiet book page. You're going to need some tearaway stabilizer, some iron-on fusing and felt, and some water-soluble stabilizer and your design. You start by hooping some tearaway stabilizer in your 120 by 120 hoop and attaching it to your machine. Go ahead and load your design and you're ready to sew the first step, which is the placement line. When it's finished sewing the placement line, this is what you're going to see. You're going to cover that with your felt that you've ironed on the fusible webbing, and then cover that with your water-soluble stabilizer and start your machine again. It will then tack down the felt. The design tells you to stop and change color at this point, but you don't need to. What it's going to do is sew that triple stitch decorative outline for the Jonah. For the next step, you do need to change colors. You want to pick up that flesh colored thread and you're going to go ahead and sew the hands onto your Jonah. This is what the hands will look like when they're done. Now you're going to change back to your outline color to do your details like your sleeves and your stripes on your Jonah. The next step sews your placement line for your hair. So you want to change your thread to the brown or whatever color you're using for your hair. You're going to place a small piece of brown felt and water-soluble stabilizer over the top of this placement line and then tack it down. For the next step, you change to your flesh-colored thread and you embroider on your face and your feet. Before you start your next step, you want to take your hoop off your machine and trim around the brown felt. And then you can put it back on your machine and stitch the decorative details of the face and the shoes using your hair or brown thread. Now your embroidery is done and you're ready to clean him up and make him into a quiet book. So start by removing all the water-soluble stabilizer that you can. Go ahead and remove him from the hoop and tear off that stabilizer and clean up any threads. He should look like this. You want to take a damp washcloth and clean up any leftover water-soluble stabilizer, and then we can fuse on the back. Now you want to fuse another piece of felt onto the back so that Jonah's nice and stiff and can slide into the pocket easily. Then you want to go ahead and carefully trim around Jonah. Now we're ready to assemble our quiet book page. We start by trimming. We're going to trim the page down to a size of 6 1/4 inches by 7 inches in height. I used my cutting board and my guide and a dressmaker's chalk pencil that washes off. The design is about 6 inches wide, so you're going to have to get as close as you can to the waves to make sure you don't cut them off. So start on that side and draw a line up on that side as close as you can to the waves. You want to take your ruler and measure 6 1/4 inches from the side you drew to the other side and put a mark at the top and the bottom and draw a line between those two marks. Then starting at the top where the lettering is and just above the lettering, line up your ruler so that the one edge is straight against your side line, and draw a line between the two sides to mark your top. Now you want to measure down from that line on each side 7 inches, and just mark from there down 7 inches, mark a line at the bottom, and repeat that on the other side. Then you're going to take and draw a straight line between those two marks. You're going to trim your page along these lines. You can use pinking shears, or I happen to have a rotary blade that is serrated. Before you trim your page, you're going to want to cut away the stabilizer so you'll have a neater edge. You don't want to cut a lot of the stabilizer away. You just kind of want to trim it out of the way of cutting the edge of the page. So when you're done with the stabilizer, you want to see that you've cut it and it's just a little bit away from the edge. At this point, you can take your ruler and line it up on your lines that you drew, and use your rotor cutter and trim that edge. You want to repeat the process by going around the whole piece, line up your ruler, and trim along each side of the page. When you're done, you should wind up with a page that looks like this. You should be 6 1/4 inches wide and 7 inches in height. For your next part, I suggest you go and find you a piece of felt that has a pretty print on it. So what we're going to do, so that a little bit of the print fabric shows through, we're going to make it a little wider than the page. You're going to want to trim your page to the size of 7 inches wide and 8 inches in height. You're going to trim it just like you did for the white part. You're just going to go around each side and trim it all off, making sure that you have a 7 by 8 inch piece. The next step is to take your white embroidered page and lay it on top of your patterned page. You should have about 1/4 inch of the pattern showing on each side. Be sure to take a washcloth and wipe off the marking chalk. Once you've made a few pages, you can attach them together with rings or ribbon or however you want to do. But I'm sure the kids in your family or your life will love these quiet books. Be sure to check out my patterns for other quiet book pages on Etsy.com.